Hello and welcome back to my channel. If I'm a new face to you, my name is Lauren. And while I always say this at the beginning of my book reviews, I am really excited to talk to you guys today about The Butcher and the Wren by Elena Urquhart. So go ahead, get a warm drink, get cozy, and let's talk about this really creepy thriller book. You can tell that care was taken with this story and that her discussing these real-life crimes influenced this book heavily. I've been dying to talk about this book with you guys, and it's been creating a lot of buzz, especially with the sequel coming out really soon. And if you are in the thriller or true crime, specifically true crime podcast community, you'll know of Elena Urquhart. She is the co-host of the podcast Morbid. Now, before we go any further, I want to give a spoiler warning, because about 50% of the way into this book, there is a major plot twist that I simply cannot avoid talking about without giving a full review. So I did not know that the plot twist existed. I did not know that it was in 50% of the book, like that halfway point. I want to give you the opportunity to not have that spoiled, because that was a wonderful experience for me and I want you to have that as well. So if you want to read the book and you don't want any of it spoiled, please go read it now and come back to this video when you are done. But if you are still with me, let's get into it. Guys, I could not put this book down. I simply could not. And there were even moments where I had to remind myself to breathe. And even like while I was at work on some of the days, I found myself thinking about this book constantly, and I just wanted to get home so I could finish reading it. That's how you know you have found a really good thriller. The pacing is absolutely fantastic, with twists and turns that kept me on the edge of my seat. And the dual perspectives, I don't know how often I see dual perspectives of like the killer and the person trying to catch the killer in thriller books. I don't know how often I've seen that, but it was so creepy in this book, especially with the time shift, but we'll get into it, don't worry. But like, it was so creepy. So seeing the story unfold through the eyes of Jeremy, the serial killer, and Dr. Wren Muller, the medical examiner and one of his previous like almost victims, a survivor I guess I would be, it added so much tension and depth to it once that was revealed as like the major plot twist. And it was this cat and mouse game the whole entire time. But before I dive into more of the book details, I want to talk a little bit about Elena Urquhart, the author. And like I said at the top of the video, if her name sounds familiar, it might be because she is the co-host of a hugely popular true crime podcast that I myself am a fan of. Like, every time one of the episodes drops, that is what I'm listening to that day. And I really like Elena and Ash's storytelling, but Elena adds a depth to it. You can tell that care was taken with this story, and that her discussing these real-life crimes influenced this book heavily. And I don't want to make assumptions, but I will say that it feels as if Elena has a deep understanding of the macabre and what makes a tale chilling. And I think her background in true crime podcasting helped to shape this gripping tale and gave the book a realistic feel, especially when it comes to the forensic details and the psychology of Dr. Muller and Jeremy both. Also, it does state on the back of the book that Elena at one point was an autopsy tech, so she had the inside details of what goes on inside a medical examination of victims. So if you are a fan of the Morbid podcast, you will enjoy this book. And if you enjoy this book, you are most likely going to enjoy the Morbid podcast. So please go try it out. It is fantastic, and I've been listening to it for a long time and I am a fan. Now, let's dive into the plot twist. And I want to do a quick set where I was reading at. So my boyfriend had to go into work in the middle of the night, and he had to go in at 9 p.m. So he was gone all night. And when he's gone, I can't go to sleep at my normal time. So I stay up until midnight or 1 and I'm reading. And I knew it wasn't a great idea to be reading this book by myself, but I did anyways. And that is the night that the plot twist hit, and I could not go to sleep. I kept thinking about it, but I was like, you cannot sit here and read this book tonight. You can't finish this book tonight. That's too much. And I'm glad I didn't, but I kept thinking about the book. And so this plot twist was when Dr. Wren Muller, our Dr. Wren, found out or revealed that she is Emily, who we had been following for the first 50% of the book, that Jeremy had kidnapped from college, medical school. He had kidnapped her, and she had changed her name after the fact because she was the only victim of his to get away. And it was this whole torturing game. It was so creepy. But what I thought was happening in real time, that Emily had been kidnapped, it was 7 years in the past. So, talk about a twist with that. What a twist. I haven't seen that, or I haven't experienced that type of a twist in a thriller book in so long, if at all, ever. And this added a whole other layer to the cat and mouse game that was already happening. And now you understand why Jeremy is so obsessed with Dr. Muller. But I still have a lingering question, even weeks after I've read this book. And it's about the timeline. If Jeremy is still an active serial killer and he is actively doing this and he has not gotten caught, how much time has passed between Wren's first encounter with Jeremy, or when he kidnapped her, to present day? Because, going to school, medical examiner schooling, I don't know what that takes. She got married, she has a life, and I think it was 7 years, but 7 years doesn't feel long enough, so maybe it was a decade. But was Jeremy actively killing that whole time? Or had he just started back up again? Because that's a long time to be an active serial killer and not leave any traces or get sloppy, leave any clues. I was just curious, I know we start off the book with a victim, but I don't think, they said oh, it looks like the butcher is back. I think they were just oh, it looks like another butcher victim, which to me implied they had been getting victims for a while. And this actually leads me to a really good point. This book isn't that long, and I definitely want to reread it. I hardly ever go back and reread thriller books, but before the sequel comes out, I think I do want to reread The Butcher and the Wren, so that I can catch all of these small clues throughout and have my questions answered. I can't just call up Elena and be like, hey girl, I got some questions about the book before I read the sequel. I wish I could. I can't. So I'm just gonna go back and reread this book, and hopefully my questions are clarified. And Urquhart had this unique background as an autopsy technician, which added a lot of authenticity to this book. And she gave forensic details and insights to this field and to this job that people of the public would not be aware of. How medical examiners and detectives work together on cases, how closely they work, if there's any type of problems with that, or if they work really closely together. And that added a layer of realism that's often missing with thrillers. And this book is pretty gory, because you are in the autopsies, graphic in a removed way, but also there's a point where Dr. Muller, she is trying to perform an autopsy and she backs off and she's like, it's too much. I am a survivor of his and this is too much for me, and I cannot perform this autopsy with the respect and the attention to detail that it requires. So this gore is not just for shock value, but it also reflected, one, the inhumanness of Jeremy, the butcher, and the humanness of all of the other characters. Maybe humanness isn't the right word for it. The humanity, I guess, would be a better word for it. Of Dr. Muller and how this has affected her, and she's not this closed off, cold person. The setting of New Orleans also played a huge role in this book. And while I have not been to New Orleans, I really, really want to go. And so I can't speak for the city personally, but from what I know about New Orleans, the city came alive in this book. And it's not just the party scene or the creepy scene, it's all encompassing of that city. From the humid, eerie atmosphere of the bayou, to the smell of the city, to the rich cultural elements that are woven throughout the story. There are so many things that really made this authentic. I really love that Elena didn't shy away from the supernatural elements of New Orleans that so many people know and love. Like in the scene where Dr. Muller is out celebrating her friend's birthday, and after they all get drinks, they decide to go and get their tarot cards read or their tea leaves read, something like that. And it doesn't feel overdone because she's not going back and back and back to this lady. It's just this one time weird, creepy encounter that kind of keeps her going. And so what I'm trying to get at is that the setting wasn't just a backdrop for the story, and you could drop this story into any city and it would work. New Orleans was almost like another character in this book and added layers and mysteries to it. They were woven together. Another aspect of this book that really stood out to me and I really want to applaud is the relationship dynamics. So between Dr. Muller and the lead detective, who was like her best friend, her best work friend, and also Dr. Muller and her husband. And sometimes in thrillers, like partners can be not supportive, or if it's kind of like inside the investigation, like Dr. Muller or somebody adjacent to the investigation, the partner isn't supportive. They're just like, oh, we're just never home. You're never home. You're constantly working, blah, blah, blah. But Dr. Muller's husband was never like that. Instead, he understood the risks of Wren's job and why she was taking those risks and why she was so motivated to help out with this investigation. But he didn't prod, he didn't poke, he didn't bring up, oh, is it because, like, are you having flashbacks? Are you having bad PTSD? Are you struggling? He didn't do anything like that, but he was just a safe presence that Wren could go to. And as a reader, I instinctively knew, like, if she needed to go to him, he will be there for her. Also, there's a part in the very end of the book where he and Wren kind of start to argue, and he's like, I don't want you going after Jeremy. And she's like, but it is my job as a medical examiner to be there because we know we will find more bodies and I need to be there. And he's arguing like it's not safe, and she's like, I have my best detective friends with me. They will not let anything happen to me. And he trusts her, and he doesn't tease her about like having a platonic friendship with a detective who is a male. He doesn't do anything like that. He just trusts her, which is so important. And this balance of realism, like, it really felt like a real relationship that I was peeking in on, like kind of creepy, but it made me root for Wren even more because she had been through all this horrible stuff with Jeremy, and she had made it out and gotten to the other side and has this full life. And for some reason, Jeremy is obsessed with her and still wants her. And so it just made me root for Wren even more because she has so much now. Despite what Jeremy did, she has so much now. Some of my favorite moments in The Butcher and the Wren were when Dr. Muller would make these small but crucial discoveries to the investigation. And they all felt like a turning point. And you could feel the stakes rising with each new clue that was uncovered. which just like ramped it up as the reader. I also really appreciate how Urquhart didn't shy away from the complexity of the characters, specifically Jeremy, because he is so disturbing. He is so inhuman, and that psychology behind it. And he's fascinating with his meticulousness. And what I really reflected on while reading this book was, where is that line between fascination and fear? Overall, I would say this is a wonderful book for thriller fans, for thriller readers. And it's really perfect if you like reading police and police procedural narratives, but you want a different twist on it, and a twist that feels authentic. The focus on the medical examiner's perspective offers a fresh take that you don't see often, or you don't see it done well often. And if you are a fan of The Silent Patient by Alex Michaelides, you will most likely enjoy this one. It's kind of the same twisty, gripping, oh my gosh, what just happened moment. And also, if you do enjoy true crime, Elena brought a lot of those elements, the realistic elements of other real life serial killers, into the book. And the psychology and how they were caught, she brought that into her book and into Dr. Muller's chapters specifically. And finally, I don't want to give away the ending. I know I did a spoiler, but I don't want to give away the ending. But the book does end on a cliffhanger, which, and the sequel is coming out in the fall of 2024, so this year, which I'm so excited about. The ending left me with so many questions, and I'm really curious to see how Urquhart will build off of those. Thank you so much for watching this book review of The Butcher and the Wren by Elena Urquhart. So my question to you is, have you read The Butcher and the Wren yet? I hope you have if you got this far into the video, but let me know in the comments below what you thought about it. I'd love to discuss it with you. And also, don't forget to check out Elena's podcast, Morbid. It is wonderful, with 2 episodes dropping per week. If you enjoyed watching this book review of The Butcher and the Wren, consider giving it a like, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. I post a new bookish video for you to enjoy every Tuesday and Friday. So until next time, book besties, happy reading.